Okay, so today we're going to learn, hopefully, some of the secrets of Tu B'Av. It's one of the least known of the Jewish holidays, but there's great secrets. So it's interesting. So if you guys want to look it up, it's in the Gemara of Tainus. So it's in the Gemara of Tainus. There's a Mishnah, like 26ab, and then we're going to go through some of the Gemara on it too. And it's interesting. So in the Mishnah, it says one of the famous statements. So it says, Misha Nichnes. So what's the famous one we know? Misha Nichnes Adar Marbe B'Simcha, right? So when Adar comes in, when the month of Adar comes in, we increase our Simcha. But this is the sad one, right? So but Misha Nichnes, like from when the month of Av enters, right? So this is the month of Av. We decrease, we decrease our simcha, right? So we decrease our happiness. We decrease in happiness. And that's right in the Mishnah. Now then, it's going to say something later in the Mishnah, which is going to completely contradict that. It's going to be very interesting. So we're going to see this statement from Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, and he's going to say, Lo haya yamim tovim liyisrael ki chamisha aser ba'av u'kayom kippurim. So he's going to say there's no greater day than Yom Kippur and Tu B'Av. It's a crazy statement, right? So now we're Av comes in, we're lowering our simcha, we're going into the morning. You know, it's like the 9 days. It's like the most intense of the 3 weeks of mourning from the 17th of Tammuz to Tisha B'Av from the 9th of Av. And the 9 days are like, we really start to we don't eat meat on the 9 days, we don't do laundry on the 9 days, we don't go swimming on the 9 days, we still, not listening to the music, which we were doing from the 17th of Tammuz, but we really increase the mourning, and then onto Tisha B'Av, where then we're sitting on the ground, we're saying the kinos, we're saying the lamentations, we're saying Eicha, so we're really decreasing our happiness, and then all of a sudden Rabban Shimon Gamliel comes out with a statement that Yom Kippur and Tu B'Av are the greatest days of the year. It's like the most tov. He's like, they're tovim, they're Yom Tovs, and we know Yom Kippur is Yom Tov, but we don't really know why Av is a Yom Tov. So he says here, there is not, here, let's see exactly how I translate it here. So he says there were no days as joyous, right? There are no days of good for Israel, for the Jewish people. Like Tu B'Av, like the 15th of Av, right? Like the 15th. Chamisha Aser B'Av Yom Kippurim and Yom Kippur. So this is a really crazy statement. And then we have to look into why Yom Kippur. Why is Yom Kippur? Because we don't think of it like, oh, Yom Kippur is coming again. I'm ready for the big party. I'm ready for the mitzvah, the fasting, and it's the most davening. It's the most intense day of the whole year. We're in shul like the most. And that's like, according to Rabban Shimon Gamliel, that's like one of the greatest days of the year. And so it's interesting because we don't think about it like that. So, and he's going to give us a reason. So one clue that we're going to look at, one clue that we don't always think about so much, is why is this month, which right now it's considered Esav's month, Tammuz and Av, part of it, are captured by Esau right now. And why is Tu B'Av going to be such a happy day if we enter Av and we're decreasing our simcha, now all of a sudden we get to Tu B'Av, and now all of a sudden it's like, according to Rabban Shimon Gamliel, it's one of the happiest days of the year, one of the greatest days of the year. One secret, hopefully Mizrat Hashem look into, is why is the month named Av? Right? Why is the month named Av? Av, Father. So there's something about this month where we're very, very close to Hashem. We're very close to Hashem, but something happened where we got kind of like separated from Hashem. We'll talk about what the 3 weeks were originally supposed to be, what they are now, and then what's going on. So one reason Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel gives of why these 2 days are so great, like there's no good days like these good days. He says Shibehen, that on them, like on these days, on these days, the daughters of Jerusalem, what they would do is they would go out and they would wear white clothes, and it's interesting, and they would borrow these white clothes. So it's interesting because that's not like a normal minhag. It's not a normal custom. Women usually, they love fashion, they love shopping, they love having their own dresses. It's very special to them. So then it's strange. This minhag of like borrowing each other's clothes. So we're borrowing clothes even from like a gamach. Like if one of the girls couldn't afford the clothes, she would borrow the clothes. And it's very special. It's a nice secret about shidduchim here. And this is great eitzah for shidduchim. It says so that they would not be embarrassed. They would not be embarrassed that someone that didn't have one. Right? So one of the girls who didn't have like the nice clothes or something to really wear, that she could borrow the clothes, and ever since everyone was borrowing clothes, even we're going to see, even in the Gemara, it says even the king's daughter, even the princess herself would borrow clothes. And we go through the order. So we have a big question here. We have a big question of if this month is about decreasing happiness, decreasing simcha, how can it be that Rabban Shimon Gamliel is saying that this is one of the greatest, days of the year? And Yom Kippur too, which we don't really think of as like, the big celebration. But there's something special about when we come out of Tisha B'Av. After we come out of those 3 weeks of mourning, there's something special about Yom Kippur. When we go through those 10 intense days like from Rosh Hashanah, 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, the Sum Gedalia, the fast of Gedalia. Then we're in the Eser Yemei Teshuvah. We're in the 10 days of Teshuvah, and finally we get done. Yom Kippur, and then once we get Motzi Yom Kippur, what's the big minchag? What's the big minchag some people do? I'm usually too exhausted to do this.
Put the sukkah.
Yeah, I have it in my head to try to do this. Sometimes I do it before Yom Kippur. Yeah. A lot of times I do it before Yom Kippur. But when I don't have the sukkah up yet, it's like, oh my gosh, after the fast, it's like the last thing on my mind is start building the sukkah. But it's a great minhag, and people start building the sukkah, because now all of a sudden we're going into Zman Simcha Seinu. We're heading to a time of happiness. So there's something very special about coming out of Tisha B'Av and coming out of Yom Kippur, and these start taking us into a time of happiness. And it's interesting. So if we really look at the month of Av, just like there's the Eser Yemei Teshuvah, the 10 days of Teshuvah in Tishrei, if we really look at it, there's really kind of like 10 days of Av that are dedicated to this, because there's a couple of men talking about the 10th of Av, that the temple was still burning, and we're not fully out of it yet. People wait until after Chatzos on the 10th to cut their hair, trim their beard, and all those things. There's something special about these 10 days that complete something, and then put us now and turn around the sadness, turn around the mourning, and turn us to like happiness. Okay, so you'll let me know when we can put the next thing up. But let's talk briefly. What was the 17th of Tammuz? What was it supposed to be? Anybody know what was supposed to happen on the 17th of Tammuz?
17th of Tammuz.
Yeah.
The
year we came out,
breaking into Jerusalem, apparently getting this to.
Right. So that's the bad. But what happened when we in the days of Moshe Rabbeinu, in the days of Moses, after we came out of Egypt, what was supposed to happen on the 17th of Tammuz?
Left Egypt.
Okay, so we were waiting 40 days for Moshe to come back down from Har Sinai.
To prepare for the Beit HaMikdash, to prepare
so
for
the
building of the Mishkan.
The Yetzer Hara was tricking the Jewish people, and he was showing an image in the sky that Moshe was dead. He was showing Moses' coffin, and he was showing that Moshe was dead, and that Moshe wasn't going to return on his 40th day. But what was supposed to happen is these luchos. Moshe was supposed to come down with the first pair of sapphire luchos. So it really should have been this Yom Tov. And what's interesting is Aaron Cohen, when the Erev Rav they were instigating the Jewish people to build the Chet HaEgel, the golden calf. Aaron Cohen, he said something very interesting in the Chumash. He says, Aaron starts building a Mizbeach, and he says, L'chag LeHashem. He says, this is for a Chag. This is for a Yom Tov. We're going to celebrate a Yom Tov for Hashem. So what Aaron knew, what the day was supposed to be, it wasn't supposed to be this crazy golden calf, and the Erev Rav getting people to dance around the golden calf. It was supposed to be the day we received this first set of Luchos tablets, the 2 sapphire tablets with the Esser Dibros, the 10 Commandments, and that would have been completely created by Hashem. The first set was on a much higher level than the second set, and the first set was the sapphire was engraved by Hashem, and it says in a midrash that underneath Hashem's kisei kavod, underneath his throne of glory, he has these bricks made of sapphire. And Hashem took 2 bricks from the floor of the throne room, and those bricks, they became the first sapphire tablets. And then Hashem himself engraved like the words of the 10 Commandments, the Esser Dibros, on the tablets. And that was supposed to be the day we got it. So it's supposed to be this great celebration, and it really should be a day of a great Yom Tov. It should be a great Yom Tov, and it should start off the 3 weeks of happiness, not the 3 weeks of mourning. So that's what it was supposed to be. Now it's interesting. So Moshe put the broken tablets into the Aron HaKodesh. In the Ark of the Covenant, wherever it's hiding right now, is those broken tablets. And there's midrashim that say in the days of Mashiach, those tablets are going to be fixed. When we do teshuvah, when we do the tikkun, when we fix up the world, everything needs to be fixed, the way it needs to be fixed, those tablets are going to be fixed again. And it could be that on the 17th of Tammuz in the future, we're going to receive those tablets finally on that day.
We're talking about a medrash now?
Yeah, these are midrashim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Midrashim.
So the tablets were broken on the 17th of Tammuz, and it wasn't supposed to be a day of tragedy. It was supposed to be a great day of celebration, a Yom Tov. Now then, if we go 3 weeks later to Tisha B'Av, what was Tisha B'Av supposed to be? What was Tisha B'Av supposed to be? What was supposed to happen? Right. It was also supposed to be a Yom Tov. And what was going to be the Yom Tov? So it's interesting. In Parsha Vayeschanan, which we just had, Moshe is pleading. He's pleading with Hashem to let him go into Eretz Yisrael. And Hashem says this interesting statement. Hashem says, I can't let you in, because it's like there's a midrash that says either I can let you in, Moshe, or I'll have to destroy the Jewish people. And what does that mean? What does that mean, Moshe? Either you get to go, and Moshe, being the great Jewish leader that he was, he says, I'd rather you destroy 100 Moshes before you hurt one Jew. Kas v'shalom, that any Jew would be hurt. So what Hashem was saying is, because if on Tisha B'Av, if we hadn't listened, and it's interesting in Parsha Vayeschanan, in Parsha Devarim, because Moshe starts explaining, I may have been in Devarim, I forgot which one, but Moshe starts explaining his perspective on what happened on Tisha B'Av, and we didn't see it initially, when we had the Parsha, the Meraglim. So we just hear what Kalev answers and what Yeshua ben Nun answers, but now in Sefer Devarim, in the book of Deuteronomy, Moshe gives us his answer, that he was also telling the people, we have to have a Emunah in Hashem, nothing can stop us, we're going to conquer the land. So what Hashem was saying is, if we went into the land on Tisha B'Av, Moshe Rabbeinu that day would have built the Beis HaMikdash. But the Tisha B'Av is supposed to be the day that the Beis HaMikdash is built. And that's also the interesting midrash. I don't know if we talk about it from Eicha Rabbah, which we can talk about why Mashiach is born on Tisha B'Av. So Tisha B'Av really should have been the day that the Beis HaMikdash is built. And we would have had this amazing celebration from the 17th of Tammuz until Tisha B'Av, and in the future we're going to. These days are going to turn into Yom Tovim. And it's 3 weeks of celebration. But now, unfortunately, because we didn't do, unfortunately, what we're supposed to do, now Av is Mematim B'Simcha. But something special is starting to happen, because after we get out of these 3 weeks of mourning, Now, according to Rabban Shimon Gamliel, now we have special days. Now Tu B'Av is a special day, and it's one of the great days of Tov in the year, and we're going to start seeing
Let's
why.
try it again.
Okay.
What basis does he have of saying that?
Which
Of the 15th of Av? What basis does Rav Shimon ben Gamliel have to say this?
so
What
one,
do you think his
so
basis
one,
is?
one proof. So the very first proof he's bringing, and it's very interesting. The proof he's bringing, and this is kind of like the key to the whole thing, like in a way. We can go through a lot of Gemara on this, but one thing he's saying is, because when we come out of Yom Kippur, and because when we come out of Tisha B'Av to Tu B'Av, it's a day for Shidduchim. And there's like the shidduch of like just like a chassan and kala, people that are getting married, like the bride and the groom. But there's also something that's been broke on a national level. So it's the month of Av, but we also have, in a sense, we have this separation. We have a separation from Hashem. We're not as close to Hashem as we used to be. Like when we have a Beis HaMikdash, when we have the Aron, Kodesh, when we have the Ark of the Covenant, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the Holy of the Holies, Hashem reveals His Shekhinah to the world. And it's revealed by the day, it's like surrounded by a pillar of cloud. And I believe like you could see the pillar of cloud, it would go up above the Kodesh HaKadoshim, so people could see like the pillar of cloud. And then it was revealed as a pillar of fire. But I think on Yom Kippur, all the gates and the doors are open. So when people go to the ceremony of the Sar Mishtaleach, when they're walking, out. So it's like you used to walk out eastward from the temple, but all the temple gates, the Golden Gate was open, the doors of the temple are open, and I think the curtain sometimes during the day is revealed, so a person can look. It's the only time of the year a person can look all the way into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, see into the Holy of the Holies when the Kohen Gadol goes in there. So it's the day that Hashem's most revealed, Yom Kippur. But like Hashem lived in our midst, and at night, like surrounded by a pillar of fire, by the day surrounded by a pillar of cloud. But we saw the Shekinah, and anyone in the world could come to Yerushalayim, could come to Jerusalem, and see that Hashem's Shekinah was living in the temple. But now, right, we're in this period of Gullus, this long exile, this long Gullus Edom, this long Roman exile, and we're kind of separated. We're kind of separated from Hashem, like until we get out of the Gullus, until all the Jewish people move back to Israel, until we rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, right? Everything is kind of like, we're kind of like this separation. Like we need this, like, in a sense, we need this, like, we need to get remarried. Like, because it says, we're going to see it here, and it says in the Gemara, that when, like Shlomo Melech, like when he was describing Matan Torah, that's in a sense, it's the day like the Jewish people were married to Hashem. It was like the chasana of the Jewish people of Hashem. We are now Hashem's people. We now received Hashem's Torah, and that's like, and the Torah is kind of like our, binding that binds the marriage together. And then Chas v'Shalom, when we don't follow the Torah, then we go into Gullus, and then we're separated from Hashem. But now, what Rabban Shimon Gamliel is saying is these are very special days. Not only is it special days for Shidduchim, for the Chassan and Kala, but it's special days for us to draw closer to Hashem again. And so now we can draw closer to the Av, Avinu Shabbat our Father in heaven. And the month of Av is really supposed to be the ultimate, month of coming close to Hashem. Okay, not the separation that we have now. So it should be the day. We'll see that Mashiach's born on Tisha B'Av is really the day, the beginning of the building of the Beis HaMikdash. All right, so
but look at it from this point of view. 9th of Av, you got smoke burning in Yerushalayim.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so 9th of Av, now.
Yeah.
9 to 15 is 6 days later. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says 6 days later.
Yep.
White dresses, dancing in the streets,
Yeah.
Halloween. How did he get from
How does it get there?
burning
To the chasana.
to
Yeah, no, it's a good mashal. Like let's say for instance, the Chas v'Shalom, some big like wedding hall burns down, right? It's ashes, it's smoke, And then 6 days later, it's rebuilt, and they're having a chasana there. It seems incredible, right? It seems like out of the ordinary. So, okay, one thing he's going to start to say is, with the Midrash, I don't know if we've gone through this yet. The Eicha Rabbah, the Midrash on Eicha, it tells this interesting story. And there's a man who's plowing with his ox in the field. So this is very fascinating. So an Arab man walks over to him, and he says to the man, he says, "Are you Jew? Are you a Jew?" So that's an interesting question. So you think about it, like, it's a special day, it's the day of Tisha B'Av, but this man's out in the field, and this Arab man can't even tell if he's Jewish. It's an interesting ramification, right? Like, and in a sense, it's kind of a sad state, because a lot of Jewish people are out there, and they don't look Jewish. You know, they look like everyone else. That someone could walk up to them in the street and say, "Are you Jewish?" And it's like a sad state of like we're not easily recognizable as Jews. And the Arab says, "Are you Jew?" And and he says, "Why?" And he says, "I hear your ox. Your ox is making this lowing sound, like the ox is making a noise." So he's saying, "Stop work." It's like take the unhook the plow, take the yoke off the ox's neck, because the temple of your God was just destroyed. So he's saying, so if you think about it, it's a very interesting midrash. This Jewish man's out in the field, he's working. It's a special day. It's one of the holiest days of the year. It's Tisha B'Av. Should be the day of the Beis HaMikdash being built. But now it's the day of the Beis HaMikdash being destroyed. But he's like going about his own business. He's like working on the affairs of the world. He's trying to grow his business, trying to become the big CEO, he's trying to become a billionaire. If you think about it, it's a sad state of kind of like where unfortunately a lot of the Jewish people are right now. They're out there in the field, even on Tisha B'Av. A lot of Jewish people don't even know about Tisha B'Av. And they're out working. They're trying to become the big CEO, the big this, the big that. And they're not even recognizable to the other nations that they're Jews. So he says, okay, so the Arab man, and it's interesting too that the Arab is sending the message. It's so scary in our days because it seems like the Arabs are really sending us a message. And then the ox begins to low again. He says, now, he says, I forgot the exact language of the Midrash, but he says, your Mashiach has just been born. So what's the point? Like, what's the main point of the Midrash? The main point is, the very second the temple's destroyed, that's now the earliest time that the temple can be rebuilt. So when we go into these periods of mourning, once we're done, now that's the earliest time it can change.
To rebuild.
We can rebuild. So what's so special about, one of the things that's so special about Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur, now the rebuilding begins. Now the marriage of Hashem back with the Jewish people can take place. Like whatever, it's like we can think of like Yom Kippur or like the 3 weeks, kind of like when couples you go to the marriage the marriage therapist, and it's tense and everyone's like they're yelling and they're screaming at each other. It's like you don't do this and you don't do that, and you need to change this and you need to change that. But then there's like the emotional breakdown, the crying, the crying on Tisha B'Av or the crying on Yom Kippur, just the breakdown, the teshuvah. And then it's like everyone wants to change, and then everything's healed. Like the tears begin to heal all the pain and the heartbreak, and now, the marriage can, be renewed. And that's one of the things that's so special about this period. Right, so let's see. So he says, then he says something interesting. He starts to go into more specific. So he says, the Benos Yushalayim, they would go out and they would do these kolos, these dance. They would dance in a circle. In the karamim, in the vineyards, and the vineyard has a very special meaning. Like the vineyard, the grapes and the wine, and it's said that Hashem Himself has made this very special wine since the 6 days of Maisa Bereishis, since the 6 days of creation, and this wine is going to be served at this great Suda during the days of Mashiach, at the Suda of the Leviathan, the Leviathan, and the Behemoth, and the Behemoth. There's going to be like the fish course is going to be the Leviathan, and the meat course is going to be the Hema, and there's going to be this amazing Suda, and then the wine at the Suda is going to be a special wine that Hashem has created since in the 6 days of creation. So the greatest wine that mankind's ever tasted. And what's the point of all this? So wine's interesting. Wine has a special quality unlike anything else in the physical world. Everything else in the physical world, it deteriorates. Even like the goof, even our goof, which is physical, our goof, our bodies start to grow older and start to grow weaker. Now Moshe, it's interesting, Moshe was outside of all this. We talked about before that the katanos or and the katanos or. The katanos or with an aleph. So Moshe went back to that state where he had a katanos or. His soul became back, came out of the body again and came out to the front. And that's why he said he had those karan or. Like Moshe was like shining. He was like a little miniature sun. And he was shining. He had to cover himself up and he would wear a special like veil. And only when he taught Torah would he take off, the veil. Because people couldn't handle the brilliance of the light that was coming off of him, the order of the Torah was coming off of him, and only when they were learning Torah did they get the strength. So Moshe started to return himself back to that state, but everything else in the physical world, physical thing, like you can look at a banana. Bananas very quickly start to deteriorate. You really eat it. It's a perfect balance to buy the banana and eat all the bananas before all the bananas go bad. It's very I have bananas all the time, it's very tricky. But wine, it's one thing in the physical world that's very strange and it acts differently. Wine actually gets better. Wine gets better. The longer a very good bottle of wine, the longer you keep it in a wine cellar, it starts to get better. And it's another interesting thing about wine that, like I used to work in a wine store, it has to be aged for about 7 years. And then it's really, now it's like an aged wine. I think in the Gemara it says halakhically just 3 years. But generally in the wine industry, they like to have it at least 7 years aged. And it's interesting, it's like one shemitah, and then you get really good wine. But so wine is compared to like the great secrets of the Torah, the great chachma, the wisdom of the Torah. And the longer the Torah sits in a person, and the more they're going over and over and over the Torah, their wisdom becomes greater and greater with age. So it's unlike anything else in the physical world. So wine has this very unique quality that it becomes better with age.
Two things.
Yeah.
One is, could there be something to do with the 15th of a month, number one? And could it be something to do with 6 days rather than 7 days?
Right, so that's good. Yeah, that's very good.
Two things.
Right, so the 15th of the month is always very, very special. Because
Why?
every month starts with the new moon. So really the first day of the month, you really can't see the moon because the moon it's like there's not much illumination on the moon yet from the
full
sun.
on the 15th.
But the 15th of the month, now is when the moon reaches its,
Apex.
its biggest illumination. Yeah, now it's fully illuminated from the sun. And so if you look at when's the greatest holidays? Pesach, the 15th of Nisan, full moon, right? We have Sukkot, the Zman Simcha Seder.
Shimon Gamliel is saying, 15th is like maybe something's full.
Right.
Something.
So he's saying even in the month of Av, which right now is still Esav's month, we haven't got the month back from Esav yet. And even though it's a month where we start to decrease our happiness, you're right, but then something special happens. When we reach that full moon of Av, when we reach Tu B'Av, it starts to change and it becomes now a month not of separation, but a month of now time of Shidduchim and coming together. When the power, and the moon is also, the Jewish people are symbolized by the moon, and the sun is, Esav, Edom, symbolized by the sun, right? Because the moon is always waxing and waning. It's small, and then it's getting more powerful. Right, so then it's like David HaMelech, King David's compared to the moon, like the kingdom of David HaMelech, David had this amazing reign of 40 years, or I think it was 40 years, and then Shlomo rules for 40 years, and that was I think the reign of Shlomo HaMelech, the king who peace is to him, that may have been the only time during world history so far we've really had real peace throughout the world. And we won't see that again until Yemot Mashiach. But we have a really wise leader, and we have peace throughout the whole world. And David, so the reign of the kings of Yehuda is compared to the moon. It waxes and wanes. There was the golden age of David and Shlomo, King David, King Solomon, And then it kind of like, we went into like Gullus, and we've had great Torah leaders from David. But like, we've been in this exile for so long, but then when we see the days of Mashiach, then it's going to finally reach its full strength. And then the interesting midrash where in the very beginning, the moon was the same size as the sun, but then the moon was reduced, and now the moon is going to regain its original size. The moon's going to become greater.
It could be that Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, look, take all the noise out.
Yeah.
We're going to have a Beis Mikdash in the future.
Yeah.
We're going to get started with it sometime. Because we just got clobbered, right? There's got to be a time in the future where we're going to have it. So it might as well be now.
Yeah.
And he says, I guess the 15th of the month is
Right.
when he says, let's get started with this whole
Right. So that's exactly what he's saying. He's saying now the pain of Av's over. Now it's a full moon. Now it's a time of the most illumination. Now, even though we're heading into the darkness now, now we're heading into a time where the nights get longer and the days get shorter. So this is the day. This is the day now. The nights really get longer, days get shorter. But we're heading into a special time. We're heading to a special time where the world was created. We're heading in a special time where, like, we're heading into the month of Elul. And the mazel, the zodiac of Elul is the Basula, Virgo, like the maiden. Like it's a month that's pure, So it's like no matter how we come into Elul, it's like we can kind of erase, we kind of erase what was before, and we can start it again. So whatever our history was, where we messed up, we're heading into a time where we can kind of like clear the books off. We can clear whatever, the bad stuff we got on the books and clear it off and start again. And it's interesting because, right, we're talking about the big holidays of the year. Pesach's on the 15th of Nisan. Sukkot is on the 15th of Tishrei. And then we have Tu B'Av now. Then we have Tu B'Shvat, the 15th of Shvat, when that's where the sap and the trees begin, and like the flowers and the blooming of spring begin even in the winter. So the 15th has great power. Now there's one month, there's a major Yom Tov. It's very interesting, but it's the only Yom Tov where it's the moon's hidden. It's the only one that happens on the Rosh Chodesh, and that's Rosh Hashanah. So what's so fascinating about Rosh Hashanah is when it happens on the new moon. We went through this whole month of Elul, where we can start again, and we say that Elul, represents like Ani L'Dodi, Vidodi Li. Like it's, the month, like we are, our relationship with Hashem is renewed, and then it's interesting. So Rosh Hashanah, we can go in there, and it's like kind of a blank slate. The moon's hidden. First day of Rosh Hashanah, it's a Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Hashanah is always a time of kapara. Everything's hidden, and it's like Hashem saying, like, let's wipe everything out. Let's forget everything that was before. Who are you today? Start the illumination of the moon today on Rosh Hashanah. Become a new person. Become who you want to be today. And then we go through that period. And then when we come out of Yom Kippur, like rewriting ourselves, recreating ourselves, when the world itself was created. Right, the creation of the world began on the 25th of Elul. That's the first day of Ma'aseh Bereshis, the first day of creation. And then we're created on the 6th day, which is Rosh Hashanah. So that's when Adam Arishon was created, on Rosh Hashanah. Right, so it's this amazing period of like if we messed up, right, it's the time of Teshuvah, and that's why it's such a happy time. It's a time of like when someone really did something like, they did something, they said something wrong to your wife, or you say something wrong to your friend, and you feel horrible about it. But it feels great when you get that forgiveness. You get that forgiveness, and then everything comes like it strengthens the relationship. When relationships can get over these hurdles, these obstacles, then the relationship is stronger.
If Yom Kippur
Yeah.
is the 10th of Tishrei.
10th, yeah.
What happens on the 15th?
Sukkot.
15th of Tishrei.
Yeah.
Is the beginning of Sukkot?
Yeah, Sukkot, yeah.
Is the beginning of Sukkot, and Sukkot is the 15th.
Yeah.
So it's another 15.
Another 15, yeah.
So it's 15.
And then that's Man Simcha Seinu. Like that's the happiest time of the year.
Right.
So right, these are the
So
happiest.
there's a lot of 15s.
A lot of 15s, right? And what's the secret of 15? So whose name is 15? So the first two letters of Hashem's name, Yud Hey, the gematria is 15. So the secret of 15 is that we're attaching Hashem on the 15th. And who's Yud Hey? Our Av, Hashem. So we're attaching to the Av on the 15th. And like 15 steps going up to the Beis Hamikdash, right? All these secrets. I feel like we should go through a little of the Gemara.
Yeah.
So, but that's a big intro. Okay, so let's see. So he says, right, the Benos Yerushalayim, the daughters of Jerusalem, Yotzos, V'cholos, Bakaramim. So they're dancing in these circles in the vineyards. Uma Hayom Ros. Now what do they say? So it's interesting. So the maidens, they would say, Bachor, the Bachar. They say, young man. They say, Sana Einecha, or E Ma'ata Borer La. So they say, young man, please lift up your eyes and see what you choose for yourself as a wife. So it's interesting. There's three different qualities here. And it's saying that the young women, they would accentuate like what qualities they were best at to try to find their perspective like Bashir. So like the very beautiful woman, they would say like, lift up your eyes and look. They say, see my beauty, right? So they would say, see the beauty and choose for yourself a wife. Now the next set of women is interesting. They say, Al titain einecha banoi, tain einecha b'mishpacha. So the next set of women would say, no, don't look for beauty. Look for the women that have a great family. And they were saying something interesting. They were saying, because what do you really want to do? Why are you getting married? You're getting married because you want to start your own family. So look, if you want to have a great family, get a woman that comes from a great family. Get a woman that has great mitos in her family, yichus, great Torah learning in her family, great business acumen in her family. Whatever great qualities you're looking for in your family, marry a woman whose family already has those qualities, and you can start your family like that. So they would go sheker achein v'hevel yofi, isha yiras Hashem hi tisalel. Here, so I'll write this on the board. Can I erase? Does everybody have this so far? Can I erase it? Or need more? I can give you more time if you need more time. You want more time? Or we can just talk it out. It's okay. Okay. So they would quote Mishlei, Proverbs, and they would say sheker achim, right? So they would say that charisma, grace, like this is like it's not real. It's a lie in a way. Like someone can be can have real charisma, real great, but it's a lie in a way. V'hevel yofi, and beauty is very like vain. It's very fleeting. Like hevel havali, like Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon would say in Koheles in Ecclesiastes. He would say like it's like futile. It's like temporary. Because if you think about it, like right, if you're only marrying a woman because let's say like some woman's like a beauty queen. When she's like, let's say she's 20, in her 20s, she's a beauty queen. But if that's the only reason you're marrying that woman, that's going to fade. That's not going to be forever. So you can't base it just on something that's fleeting. Right? So Shlomo says in Proverbs, he says, Eshes Chayil, he's thinking every Shabbos night. So sheker achein, so like charisma, the great personality, it's a lie in a way. V'hevel yofi, and beauty, it's very vain, it's very fleeting. So Isha yiras Hashem, he sees halal. But a woman that has the yiras Hashem, a woman that fears Hashem, she should be praised. So let's take a look. Here, I just finished reading, and then we'll go into Mishlei and we'll look at what some of the commentators said. So it says, V'omer tenula mi pri yadecha. So it says, and give her the fruit of her hands. V'halucha b'shari ma'asecha. And give her the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in her gates. So we'll see what that means. So it's from Proverbs 31:30 and 31:31. All right, so let's take a look at what some of the commentators said in Eshes Chayil. So we'll take a look here. All right, so it says, Sheker achein v'hevel yofi, isha yiras Hashem hi tisalal. So grace or charisma is false and beauty vain. A God-fearing woman, she deserves to be praised. So charm and beauty are not of such value that an accomplished woman should be praised for having them. Only a woman who is God-fearing is truly deserving of praise. So in the Mitsudos, he says something really fascinating here. He says sheker achein. He says the charisma, grace, it's false. So you can make that a zero, right? So give a zero, right? And he says the hevel yofi, and beauty is vain. So you can give another zero, right? So the score right now, the beauty contestant, she's got a great personality, she's got great beauty, but we're giving her a zero. We're giving her a zero. And we're giving her a zero because she didn't do anything. Like Hashem made her very beautiful. Okay, you're beautiful, but you didn't do any work. You're just, Hashem made you that way, you're beautiful. We're giving you a zero. You're not getting a 10, you're getting a zero. And then you've got a great personality and you're very charismatic and everyone comes running towards you, but we're giving you a zero. We're giving you a zero. That's your score. Now, but Yiras Hashem, now this is something that she worked really hard to acquire. Because we say everything's in Shemayim except Yiras Hashem. So the woman had to work very hard to develop the Yiras Hashem. So now we're going to give her a 1. We're going to give her a 1 for the Yiras Hashem. But when we put the 1 in front of the 2 zeros, now it's 100. So now not only a 10, so all the rest of the beauty contestants, we gave them a 10, she's a 100. She's a 100. Because when the 1 is placed before the 2 zeros, then the 3 digits become 100. The zeros now take on value. This pasuk it's not denigrating charm and beauty, but it's putting them in their proper perspective. If a woman is God-fearing, then the charisma, the grace, and the beauty now can be valuable attributes to enhance her true inner beauty. So someone like Sarah Menu, she was one of the most, the beautiful women in the world. But when you attach that to her Yiras Hashem, when you attach that to how she followed the Torah, now her beauty and now her charisma glorifies Hashem in the world, glorifies the Torah. Where someone, you can have a supermodel, but maybe she doesn't act so nice and look to people, and her beauty doesn't do anything. But now the beauty's enhanced and the beauty's used for something great. Right? The beauty's used for something good. So the Imre Bina, he says that despite all the great virtues of the Avos, like Abraham, the one for which the Torah praises him is that he had Yiras Hashem. So the pasuk says that Abraham showed his readiness even to sacrifice his son Yitzhak, Isaac, if it was Hashem's ratzon, if it was Hashem's will. And Hashem said to us, he said, now I know that you are God-fearing. Now I know that you have Yiras Hashem. So praising a woman for her beauty can be harmful. When Sarah was praised for her beauty, she then was abducted and taken to the palace of Paro. But when we praise a woman for her Yiras Hashem, it can only be positive, and it's good to do that, says the Mayim Loes. Now the Chachamim, they relate how the maidens of Yerushalayim would go out on the 15th of Av to seek a husband. They would quote the verse, don't look for beauty, but rather a girl from a good family. And they would say, Sheker achein v'hevel yofi. So the Meiri advises that when choosing a wife, a man should look for a virtuous woman of good midos. And he quotes I think Pirkei Avos. He says, don't take a wife for her wealth or her beauty. These midos are vain, and they will leave her, but her character, her midos, and her bad midos will remain. So it says in the Gemara in Kesubos, in 17a, it says that how should you praise a bride? How should you praise the Kala? So the students of Hillel, they would say that you should praise her Kala Na'ah v'chasuda. She's beautiful and charming bride, even if she's unattractive. Although the Torah forbids lying, it's permitted to bend the truth for the sake of peace. So for shalom bayis, we're actually allowed to lie. And it says that our pasuk says that in the areas of grace and beauty, that one can either lie and praise a bride for these non-existent qualities. But when discussing Yiras Hashem, Yiras Shemayim, a woman should be praised only if she is truly God-fearing, says the Kesef Tzaruf. So the Malbim, he explains that it's a continuation of the previous one. This woman surpasses others. She did not take pride in grace or beauty. Instead, she was proud that she had attained Yiras Shemayim, that she had attained Yiras. Very nice, right? All right, so maybe we'll stop it right here, and we'll do part 2 after. Okay. Alright, how's everybody doing? Good? Okay. Okay, so what's interesting about the Gemara when we break it down a little bit is, just as on the 17th of Tammuz or Tisha B'Av, there's a list of like 5 bad things that happened through Jewish history. Here on Tu B'Av, we see that there's 5 good things that happened in history. So it's kind of like the opposite of where we were. So we'll see how far we can get in the Gemara. I'll try to go through everything. Okay, so let's see. So then we're going to go to the Gemara on the statement in the Mishnah. The statement in the Mishnah we had up before. So Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, he says, Lo haya yamin tovim liYisrael. There's no days as good for the Jewish people. Ka chamisha aser ba'av u'hu Yom Kippurim. So there's no days as good like Yom Kippur and like Tu B'Av. And he says, Bishlema Yom Kippurim. And he says it's obvious. The Gemara says it's obvious with Yom Kippur because Mishum De'isbe Slicha U'Mechila. Because these are days of like Slicha, Mechila. These are days where Hashem forgives us. And He forgives us for the Averas. And so it says, Yom Shenitnu Bo Luchos HaAcharonos. And also in Yom Kippur, just as we talked about before, we talked about when we were supposed to get the first set of the sapphire luchos. It was supposed to be on the 17th of Tammuz. But the day that we actually got the second set of the sapphire luchos was on Yom Kippur. So Hashem forgives us 120 days later, right? And then Moshe Rabbeinu comes back down with the second set of the sapphire luchos. So we know Yom Kippur is good. Like we know, without a doubt, we know Yom Kippur is good. That's when we got the second set of luchos. But the Gemara asks, it says, but Ella, Chamisha, Aser B'Av, Mahi, what is it? That's the big question. It's like, what is Tu B'Av? We don't know so much about this holiday. Like, what is it? What's so special about it? Why are we comparing it to Yom Kippur, which is like one of the holiest days of the year? So Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, he says, Yom Shehutru Shavatim Lavo Zeh B'Zeh. So he says something interesting. So he says, Tu B'Av, it was a day where the people in different tribes, they were allowed to get married with each other. So it used to be like you could only marry, like a chassan and kala could only marry, they would marry inside their own tribe. But on this special day, then they can marry someone for a different tribe. So they had a shidduch crisis back then, we have a shidduch crisis now. So it all started with the daughters of Slavchad. So it says Madrush. So how do we know this? How do we know that on Tu B'Av we can marry, or how do we know that all of a sudden it was permitted to marry someone from a different tribe? So it says Zeh davar asher tziva Hashem lifno Slavchad. So this is the matter that Hashem commanded to the daughters of Slavchad. So just a quick background, right? Slavchad, they think he may have been the Makoshes Eitzim. He was the person gathering wood on Shabbos, so he was sentenced to death. He wasn't part of Korach, like his daughter said, he wasn't part of Korach's rebellion. He wasn't doing anything to rebel. It's fascinating with Salafchad, like he was trying to Makadesh Shem Shemayim, and it's just crazy interesting things with him. But the daughters, there was no sons, so the daughters asked if they can inherit land, and they were told they can inherit land, but they were told by Moshe, they were told that they could only marry someone inside their tribe. I think it was from the tribe of Manasseh, so that the land wouldn't go to a different tribe. Because if the daughters married people from other tribes, then all of a sudden the other tribes would start gaining a portion of that tribe's land, and then they would lose. So Moshe's advice was that no, you should only marry someone in your own tribe, so the land stays in your family. So Devar Zeh lo yechei noheg ela b'dor zeh. But what's interesting is that we make a drush that this was only for that generation. And then the rest of the generation, starting with Tu B'Av, they could marry other tribes. Because they made a drush that when they said that, when it says that Devar asher tziva Hashem lifno Slavchad, that it was only commanding the daughters of Slavchad, but Ela b'dor zeh. It was only in that generation that the daughters of Slavchad lived. But in the rest of the generations, now people could marry people from other tribes. So that was it opened up the dating pool. The shidduch crisis was over, And now, so Tu B'Av was a day of great celebration. Right, so then, Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Nachman, he says, Yom Suhutar Shevet Binyamin Lavo B'Kachal. So Tu B'Av is the day that the tribe of Binyamin could come back into the congregation of Israel. So Shneimar, it says in the Torah, it says, Ve'ish Yisrael nishba b'mitzpah leimor ish mimenu lo yitain bito leBinyamin leisha. So it says, like, every man of the Jewish people of Israel, he swore an oath in Mitzpah, in a town called Mitzvah, and he says that a man, he said, ish mimenu, a man from us, lo titain, we will not give his daughter, none of us will give his daughter to anyone in the tribe of Binyamin for a wife. Does anybody know the story of, like, the Pelegish of Givna? I haven't learned it in a while. It's like, I think it was related to that. Let me see if they give us an explanation here. Let's see. So it says the 15th of Av was the day on which the tribe of Binyamin was permitted to enter the congregation of the Jewish people. After the tragic incident at Givna, for which the tribe of Binyamin was blamed, the other tribes like kind of ostracized them, like pushed them out.
This tribe of Benjamin can re-enter the Jewish
Right,
people.
they can re-enter the Jewish people.
Is that which is number 2?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about now. Yeah, we're doing number 2 right now. Oh, let's see.
The tribe of Benjamin can re-enter the Jewish people.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so let's see. So right. So there was this. I don't know. It was a whole crazy incident, and I think it was something like. Right, I don't want to go too much into it right now, but there was this oath taken that no one would marry their daughters to the tribe of Binyamin, and they had this massive civil war, and I think the tribe of Binyamin was like decimated down to very low numbers, and they would have completely disappeared. But then what happens is there was a drush, so it says ma drush, like why on the 15th of Av, why all of a sudden was it permitted that people could marry their daughters, to sons from Binyamin? So it says Amar Rav. So Rav says the pasuk itself says they took an oath and they said mi menu. They said from us, we're not going to give one of our sons to to be a husband to a daughter from Binyamin, but lo mid binenu, but not from our son. So they took an oath just in their generation, but they didn't take an oath in the following generations. So then the tribe of Binyamin could re-enter the Jewish people. They could marry daughters from other tribes. And then I think it also works that like someone being Jewish, halakhically, the mother has to be Jewish. But we haven't dealt with this in a while. But what tribe someone actually is from is determined by the father. Whatever tribe the father's in, that's what tribe they are. So we see it only really today with like Kohanim and like Levinim. Like if someone's father's a Kohen, they're a Kohen. If someone's father's a Levi, they're a Levi. But so we don't have many practical, but when we start B'ezrat Hashem, we start, dividing up the land again in the days of Mashiach, then everything will work by the father. Whatever tribe your father's in, that's what tribe you're in. So what's interesting here on a more mystical level, we talked about before the whole idea of like the separation from Hashem, and then the reunion and the remarriage, to Hashem, the Jewish people and Hashem. So what was special? Does anybody know what was special about Binyamin's territory, the tribe of Binyamin? Does anybody know where their land actually was?
How does Jerusalem go to get married?
So most of Jerusalem is all, it was all owned by the tribe of Yehuda, of Judah. What's fascinating is the Temple Mount itself, just like where the actual Beis HaMikdash stood, that little area was like the tribe of Binyamin. So Binyamin's land came right down there. So where the Beis HaMikdash stands was actually in the tribe of Binyamin. So there's some kind of a deeper concept here. So what does it mean? Like we're pushing out the tribe of Binyamin from the Jewish people. But that is like the most important. We need the tribe of Binyamin because they own the territory where the Beis HaMikdash actually stands. So like with Chas v'Shalom, we have this whole civil war, and now we have this whole other nation. It's around the tribe of Binyamin. And now, they're like a new nation, Chas v'Shalom. Now they own the land where the Beis HaMikdash has to be built. So there's something very deeper here about like the tribe of Binyamin being pushed out, and now being able to come back into the Jewish people, and that's all happening in Tu B'Av. So there's something about the reunion of the Jewish people with our Avinu Sheba Shemayim, and it happens on Tu B'Av. So there's something special about Tu B'Av that's all part of this reunification.
And so they own the land of which land?
Right, so they own the land where the Beis HaMikdash was built, right, so where the temple was built, yeah.
The Beis HaMikdash is going to be?
Where, yeah, it's gonna be,
Beis HaMikdash?
yeah. Now it's interesting, there's a nevuah in Yechezkel, in Ezekiel, and it talks about like the future division in the land. And it seems like, it seems like it could change. And I think, and it seemed like the way he had it, it's going to be like strips of land. And I think the way it's going to work in the future, I think like there's portions of like Lebanon, Syria, all of Jordan, portion of Iraq, I think until the Euphrates, a portion of Egypt, where the Goshen, like we lived in Goshen, we were given Goshen by the Paro, the Pharaoh in Egypt. That's the very rich delta region in the northern part of Egypt. It's very fertile. It's like where the Nile breaks into the deltas. And we were given that originally by the Paro in the days of Abraham. It was given as a gift to Sarah. We were given it again in the days of Yosef. Like it was given as a gift to Yaakov and his sons. And then we're promised Hashem in the future that one day we will give him Goshen, Egypt again. And what is even more interesting from like a geopolitical aspect is I think that would give us control of the Suez Canal. And there was the whole war in '56, I think, where I think it was very interesting. It's like Israel, I think it was Britain and France actually conquered the Suez Canal, and then President Eisenhower pressured them to make them give it back, which was interesting, like the Suez Canal crisis, all that. But in the future, like Hashem promised that, and I think the Sinai Desert is also going to be ours. Like Israel had it, they gave it back, but I think the Sinai Desert. And then I think the way Yechezkel had it is like there'll be strips all the way from like the Mediterranean, like all the way east, to the Euphrates, and there'll be strips. And then there's this prophecy of what's supposed to happen to the Har HaBayis in Jerusalem, and Jerusalem. It's supposed to become this like fertile garden strip. We talked about like that's where the Garden of Eden originally was, and it's going to be more of a garden. It's not going to be a walled city anymore. It's going to be like very green and lush and flowery. There's going to be like walls of like precious metals and jewels, like crazy, the fantasy of like the palaces and stuff, and the beautiful Beis HaMikdash. And there's going to be there was Nevuah was like the two mighty rivers were going to come out from under the Temple Mount. One was going to go into the Dead Sea, wash that out, clean out the water there, and one was going to go to the Mediterranean. So it could be, I haven't learned it in a bit, but it could be that strip is owned by no tribe now. The strip of the Beis HaMikdash of Jerusalem may not be owned by any tribe. I forgot, but I think it's, and then there's strips of land, and now even the tribe of Shimon, which was, he was absorbed into Yehuda before, he'll have his own strip of land. So it's going to be, hopefully, we'll see it soon. It's going to be pretty miraculous. Okay, so then the tribe of Binyamin comes back in, right, to the Jewish people. Okay, number 3. Okay, so Amar Rabba Bar Barchana Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So Yom Shekulo Bo Meisei Midbar. So this is the day where the Jewish people stopped dying in the Midbar. So unfortunately, right, Tisha B'Av we talked about before. Tisha B'Av was supposed to be the day where the whole Jewish people came into Eretz Yisrael as a nation for the first time, and it would have been the day where Moshe Rabbeinu, where Moses builds the Beis HaMikdash. But unfortunately, like we listened to the Meraglim, we listened to the spies, and it became a day of crying. And Hashem says, if you're going to cry for nothing, right, I'm going to give you some real big stuff on Tisha B'Av to cry about, right? The destructions of the temples, great tragedies. I think what we can talk about soon, Beitar. I think the revolt of Bar Kokhba revolt and the destruction of Beitar happened on the 9th of Av. So, but they say that the people in the desert, they stopped dying. So what it meant is that there was a gezerah from Hashem that generation would not, the men of that generation would not enter the land of Israel. So then Moshe and Aaron, after Mei Meriva, after the incident there, like they also didn't go in with that generation. But every Tisha B'Av, it was crazy, they would dig like a kever for themselves. They would dig a hole that there would be their grave, and they would go into the grave, and then some people would die on Tisha B'Av, and they would just seal it up, and then some people would come back out. But this year, the 40th year, now no one died on Tisha B'Av. So they stopped dying. So to Mar, Ad Shalo Kulo Mese Midbar Lo Haya Dibor Yimosha. They said, let's see, so it says, the 15th Av was the day in which the deaths of the Jews in the wilderness in the Midbar stopped. The entire generation that had left Egypt had passed away, and as the Master said, after the sin of the spies, on the account of which the Jews of that generation were sentenced to die in the wilderness, as long as the death of the Jews in the wilderness had not ceased. So Hashem's speech did not come to Moshe, and it said, Vayehi Shenamar, it says, Vayehi kasher tamu kol anshe hamilchama lamus. And it says, and it came to pass when all the men of war were consumed and dead from among the people. And then it says, Vayidaber Hashem Eli. And it says, Hashem spoke to me and said, Eli haya hadibor. And it's saying that it indicates that only then, after the last member of that generation died, then Hashem's speech was delivered to me. So Moshe had this very close, the closest like anyone's ever had to Hashem, the highest nevuah, the highest form of prophecy. But Moshe only had it the first year they came out of Egypt. It's very interesting. And then after the Chet of the Meraglim, after we listened to the spies, and we were punished not to go into Israel, for those, 40 years in the desert, for the next 38 years, Moshe had no nevuah, no direct nevuah from Hashem anymore. But then after the last person from that generation had died, then Hashem returned the nevuah to Moshe, and then prophecy came back to Moshe. And then you see, he delivers Devarim and all the things that happen, like the war against Og, the war against Sichon, all the miraculous things that happen in the 40th year. So then the nevuah ceases. So what happened is, the Midrashim say, what happened is, these men would lie down in the graves, and every year, a certain amount would pass away, and then finally, got to the 40th year, they laid down in the graves, and they survived. So everyone still lived, and they weren't sure if it was over. So the next night they laid down again on the 10th of Av, and they were still alive, and the 11th of Av, and so finally when they reached Tu B'Av, when they reached the night of the 15th, and it was the full moon, they said, the Gezerah must be over, we've reached the full moon, we see the full moon in Av, and then, it was a great night of celebration, so no one else was going to die in the Midbar, and now everyone alive was now going to go into Eretz Yisrael, they were going to go into Israel, and the Gezerah, the decree was over. So it was a great night of celebration. And that is number 3, so that's our third part. Let's see how we're doing. Okay. So then, the next thing is, so Ula Amar, so Ula says, Yom Shabitel Hoshea bin Ela, Peroz Dayos, Shehoshiv Yeravam ben Nevat, Al Hadarachim. So on the 15th of Av, this is the day that King Hoshea, the son of Ela, another king, these were the kings of Israel, and they canceled the guards that Yeravam ben Nevat had placed on the roads, so that the Jewish people, Shalo Yalu Yisrael la Regel, so the Jewish people would not go up to the Regel. Right, so, are you guys familiar? With the story of Yeravam ben Nevat? Okay, so we'll go through it a little bit. Okay, so Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon had a son, Rechavam. And Rechavam, at first I think he was listening to King Solomon's advisors, but then he kind of replaced the older, wiser advisors that advised his father. And he got kind of young, he got the young startups. He got the young startups. And the people were, they were really complaining because when they were building the Beis HaMikdash, King Solomon, he had a tax, so he was taxing the Jewish people so they could afford all the construction project. There was, the whole construction project done in Lebanon, where they're cutting down the massive cedar trees, and then there was the quarry with the shamir worms, where they're taking the stones out of the ground, and it's this whole massive construction project to build the Beis HaMikdash. But after the Beis HaMikdash was already built, the tax wasn't stopped. That's the problem with the government taxes, right? Once the government starts taxing, usually the taxes don't go away. So the people start complaining. Like, okay, well, we built the Beis Hamikdash, take off the tax. We don't need to pay these crazy taxes anymore. So unfortunately, Rechavam had these young advisors, and they were like, no, keep taxing people. Forget about that. The government needs money, right? That's probably with government advisors. The government always needs more money. So Rechavam, instead of having compassion for the people, he came out and he's like, oh, if you think the taxes were bad under my father, wait till you see how, wait till you see how I'm gonna tax you. So Hashem didn't like this, and he sent a Navi to, what was it? And I think, so Rechavam, I think his garment was ripped. It was ripped into pieces, and so the symbolism was that I'm going to rip away 10 tribes from you, and I'm going to give them to another king. So the other king was Yeravam ben Nevat. So now 10 tribes, the 10 tribes of the north, were now going to be ruled over by Yeravam. So now we have the split. We have the kings of Yehuda, we have the kingdom of Yehuda, the kingdom of Judah in the south, and we have the kingdom of Yisrael in the north. So it's interesting. So Yeravam ben Nevat, he was the descendant of Ephraim, who's from the tribe of Yosef, from Joseph. And then we have Rechavam, and he's the son of King Solomon, and he's from Yehuda. So in the future, so this is also the other famous prophecy of Yechezkel. He's take an eighth, from Yehuda, take a tree, or a tablet from the tribe of Yehuda, and take a tree from Ephraim, from Yosef, and put them back together, and they will become one again. So one of the main jobs of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David is there's going to be no jealousy between the two of them. We saw there was massive jealousy from the one son from Rachel. So the first King Shaul from Benjamin, from Benjamin, he had a lot of jealousy of David, who was from Yehuda. So we see that jealousy early on, with the first two kings of the Jewish people. But now there's a split that Hashem created. So there's a split again between Yosef and Yehuda. And we see this even in the days, right? We see it in the days. It's the whole idea of Maisa Avo Simon Labanim. We see it in the days of the Shvatim themselves. We see it in the days where Yosef had the dream where he was going to become king, and the other brothers were jealous. And Yehuda was the one that says, let's sell this guy, let's throw this little Meshugana, into the pit, and the jealousy of the brothers. So the tension between Yosef and Yehuda was even with Yosef and Yehuda started there. And then their descendants, their children, the kingdoms, so there's a lot of tension. And then we see that through, Yechezkel, he tells us in the future that there's going to be some great healing, that Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, they're not going to have any jealousy to each other. And they're going to reunite the Jewish people together. But right now there's been this rivalry, this tension, and even now you can see I don't know if it's exactly so we don't know exactly where the 10 tribes are. There's these really interesting midrashim that's they're beyond the Sabbatan River, and this mythical river where it's really rocky, and there's all these rapids, and it's throwing stones up during the week, and then on Shabbos, it calms down, but you can't cross it on Shabbos because it's Shabbos. So they're either in this mythical dimension, or it could just be the 10 tribes are just assimilated in another nation somehow. So we don't know. We don't know until everything's going to get returned. But there's been this separation of the tribes. So what Yeravam ben Nevat did is he understood that during the next regal, let's say it's Pesach, and all the Jewish people are going to go to Yerushalayim, they're going to go to Jerusalem to the Beis Hamikdash, and there's a law, there's a halacha, that only a king from the house of David can sit down. They are the only ones given permission to sit down on the Har HaBayis, on the Temple Mount. No one else is allowed to sit down. Kohen Gadol is not allowed to sit down. No other tribes allowed to sit down. It's very interesting, only the king from the house of David has a special permission from Hashem that they're allowed, and it's very incredible, they're actually allowed to sit down on the Har HaBayis. So Yeravam, who's from Ephraim, he realized that when he takes, when the rest of the 10 tribes go down there for Pesach, and they all go up to the Har HaBayis, they're going to see Rechavam ben Shlomo, they're going to see Rechavam, the son of Solomon, they're going to see that he gets to sit because he's from the house of David. But Yeravam ben Nevat, even though he's ruling over the 10 tribes of the north, he's going to have to stand like everybody else, and people are going to not respect him. So because, once again, of kavod, his desire for honor, so then he, unfortunately, he really went off. So what he did is he built these 2 new golden calves, and he set up like these houses of Avodah Zarah, and he created his own festival of Avodah Zarah. I guess on like all the other holidays, whatever, so whatever holiday it was. Pesach, there's going to be some celebration in his Avodah Zarah houses. If it's Sukkot, no, there's going to be. If it's Shavuos, no. So he really he very corrupted everything. So now, and then he set up guards, and he wouldn't let people go down to the regal. So this was a great day. So in Tu B'Av, one of his descendants, one of Yeravam's descendants, Hoshea, or one of the kings of Yisrael, he lifted the Gezerah. So now on Tu B'Av, in the year of King Hoshea, he lifted the Gezerah, and now people were allowed to go down from the northern tribes. They were allowed to go down for the regal to the base of Mikdash again. They were allowed to go to the temple again. So the decree of Yeravam was lifted. Okay, so let's see what it says here. So that's telling us it lifted the decree. Okay, then I forgot to put. I think it's supposed to be Beitar. I put the daughter's version, but I think this one's really supposed to be Beitar. But okay, so let's see. So then it says, Rav Masna Amar Yom Shenitnu Haruge Beisar Lekavura. So it was the day. So I'll leave the daughters of Jerusalem, but we'll also add that it was the day of the Haruge Beisar. They were now allowed to be buried. And this is interesting, and this is when...
That's number 5?
Yeah, this is really 5. But like this kind of, the daughters of Jerusalem, we're going to see kind of that kind of symbolizes everything.
So number 5, I have it.
Right, so 5
is Jerusalem go out to get married.
Right, so now they can be buried. You can keep it. It's okay. And then, but they were allowed to be buried. They were on Tu B'Av. They were allowed to be buried. And what's interesting is that's how the bracha of Tov U'Meitiv. It's interesting. It's actually made for this. It seems very unusual, but it was actually made for this event. So this is, we'll try, if we have time, we'll talk about it. This is the Bar Kokhba rebellion. Really, like any of these subjects, we could go into like a very long time. I'm trying to just do like the summary.
So that one's allowed to be buried. Number 5.
Okay, right. So we're gonna see. So now they were allowed to be buried. So we're gonna see what happens. So Rav Masnamar, he says, Yom Shenitnu Haruge Beisar Lekavora. So this was the day that the people that were killed in the battle of Beitar, they were allowed to be buried. So Amar Rav Masna, so also Yom Shenitnu Haruge Beisar Lekavora. So on that day, on Tu B'Av, this was the day that the people that were killed in the battle of the rebellion of Beisar, they could be buried. So Tiknu B'Yavna, and then in the yeshiva in Yavna, they instituted the bracha of Hatov HaMeitiv on this event, which seems very incredible. So Hatov, the good, was Shalo Hisrichu. So their bodies miraculously did not decompose. We talked about before. In the physical world, things very quickly decompose and break down. And Hashem's even created these things called decomposers. He created bacteria. He's created like the fungi, like the mushrooms and the other fungi. And their purpose is to be decomposers. They break things down. Like if there's like a dead animal or a dead plant, the decomposers immediately come in and they start breaking down things in the physical world. But this was like a miracle, it's a nace, that even though it was 3 years, the bodies were left for 3 years, they didn't decompose at all. So we make hatov on that. And then b'hameitiv shenisnu lekavora, that they were now allowed to be buried. So it's really interesting because we wouldn't associate this with tov u'meitiv. Like just because like there was this horrible battle against the Romans and these people were killed, and now they miraculously their bodies didn't decompose, and now we could have a levaya, a funeral for them. It doesn't seem like that's something we should make a tov u'meitiv on. It seems like if we had something miraculous, like a techias hamesim, like a resurrection of the dead, that would be a tov u'meitiv. But what's interesting about this is just like all the events we're talking about, it's kind of like the first step. You kind of need the Tisha B'Av to get to the Tu B'Av. You kind of need the Rosh Hashanah, and you need the you need the Yom Kippur to get to Sukkot, and you get to Shmini Atzeres. And then we can talk about too, we can end maybe also on, October the 7th, how strange that was, that's on Shmini Atzeres. But here, the first step is, like, you need the Levaya, you need the burial, but now in the future, when we actually get to the Techiyas HaMesim, now it is a Tova Meitiv, because now they will be able to be part of Techiyas HaMesim. So the people that were killed in Beisar, it's their first step to reach the Techiyas HaMesim. So then, Rabba v'Rav Yosef da Amri Tarvayu. So they both said, Yom Shapasku Melikros Eitzim Lemaracha. So it's interesting. They say, on this day we stop chopping down trees to use as wood on the altar. So the Tanya was taught in a Brisa, Rebbe Eliezer Hagado, Rebbe Eliezer the Great, Omer, he says, V'chamisha aser ba'av ve'elak tashash kocha shokama. So starting today on Tu B'Av, the power of the sun becomes much weaker. V'lo hayu korsin eitzim l'ma'aracha. So we stop cutting down trees to use as wood to burn on the altar. So lefish ein yavation, because they don't dry out. It's too wet now. It's like we're starting to head into the fall and winter, and things get too moldy and wet, and there's like worms in it. So we stop cutting down wood starting on Tu B'Av to put on the altar. And I heard a shir, I think it was Rabbi Daniel Glasstein, I heard it earlier as I was driving to Daven this morning. So essentially, anybody want to guess what day they start cutting down the trees to use the wood for the altar? So if Tu B'Av is when they stop, who wants to guess when they start? Which day? Tu B'Shvat. So Tu B'Shvat's the first day where we can start cutting down trees to use the wood for the altar, and then Tu B'Av is the day where we stop cutting down the trees, because now everything's too moist and it's too wet, and so we don't want the wood to get wormy when we use it on the Mizbeach. Okay, so then, Amar Rav Menashe, so V'karole Yom Tavar Magal, and this day is called the breaking of the sif. It's called the Tavar Magal. Mekan ve'elak, from here and onward. To Mosef, Yosef. It says it's called the breaking of the sif. And from this date onward, no more trees were cut down, and therefore it's a celebration for the trees. Now the trees are happy because the trees don't have to get cut down anymore. So, to Mosef, Yosef, to La Mosef, Yasef. So if someone adds on, and I'll explain what this means in a second. If someone adds on, then they, here, let me just read the whole thing, then I'll go through it. So, Telam Mosef Yasef, Ma Yasef, what does it mean that he will be gathered? Amar Rav Yosef, Tik Barei Ime. So this is interesting. Okay. Because the days, so Gemara is saying here, because the days start to get really short, and now we have really long nights, so it says, when it says Demosef Yosef, that person should start to add on time at night to his normal schedule of studying Torah. Because we have longer nights now, so it's like the person should study more Torah at night. And it says if a person studies more Torah at night, he's going to, like, years will be added to his life. He's going to, the more he studies at night, the more years are added to his life. And night is also like the symbol of galus, of exile. Like the more we learn Torah in exile, like then the more we're going to learn Torah, in the Geula and Olam Haba. Like, so then, Chas v'Shalom, if a person doesn't like add on to the hours, it says safe. He'll be gathered in. It says in Chas v'Shalom, it says someone will be like buried by his mother. His mother will bury him, and he'll be gathered to the grave. All right, moving along. So we're trying to keep it happy today. All right, so then Shebahen Benos Yerushalayim. So now we get back to the daughters of Jerusalem. Oh, you need
something I can write on.
Okay, a piece of paper. I can give you the back of, I think, a physics quiz I have. Let me see if that will work. Let me see if I may have paper on one of these. I forgot which one I had paper. Maybe the other one. Okay, there we go. Alright, so this will work. This is the back of quiz number 5. You can take the quiz if you want. If you want to take a physics quiz. Let me see how you do.
Physics quiz, no, I think I want to. I'm
Okay.
not sure what I want any of these.
Okay, so
Just the things that you're.
alright, so now we're coming to the big finale. We'll go back to the daughters of Jerusalem. So it says, Shebahan Benos Yerushalayim. So the daughters of Jerusalem, so Tana Rabbanan, it's taught in the Brisa. So Bas Melech Shoeles Mibas Kohen Gadol. So this is interesting. So we talked before that all the daughters of Jerusalem they would borrow like white dresses from each other, and they did it so like no one would be embarrassed. If like there was a girl whose family didn't have a lot of money and she didn't have a nice dress to wear for the shidduchim, like everyone would wear a borrowed dress, so then it wasn't embarrassing for anyone to borrow a dress. So a girl who was from a poor family, she could just go to the dress gemach and it wouldn't be embarrassing because everyone's borrowing a dress. But this is really interesting. So it's saying, even if it was the daughter of the king, so the princess, and this tells you an interesting order, the princess would borrow a dress mibas Kohen Gadol. So the princess would borrow the daughter of the Kohen Gadol's dress.
Good.
The Bas Kohen Gadol, so the daughter of the Kohen Gadol, she would borrow a dress from the Sagan Kohen Gadol, from the assistant, the deputy Kohen Gadol. The Bas Sagan Kohen Gadol, she would borrow a dress mibas Meshuach Milchama. So there's a special Kohen that was anointed for war, and like he would make the speech before the war, and they would blow the shofars before they went to war. So the daughter of the Sagan Kohen Gadol would borrow the dress from the daughter of the Meshuach Milchama Kohen, and then the daughter of the Meshuach Milchama Kohen would just borrow her dress from just a Kohen hedyot, just a normal, I don't know, common, I don't know how to say it, a common Kohen, or just any other rest of the Kohanim. So then the Kol Yisrael sholim zeh mizeh, and then the rest of the Jewish people, they would just all kind of share the dresses and they would borrow from each other. So kedei shelo levayesh es mi she'ein lo, and this was very beautiful. It was like so no one would be embarrassed. So I guess this is it shows you it's a very good idea for people, in that looking for shidduchim, that what's really important is to learn like not to embarrass anyone else. And if you think about it, like it's a really great quality to have before going into a marriage, like a chassan or kala, a husband or a wife, to have the sensitivity to not embarrass who they're married to. So it's like that's like one of the primary like mitos, the qualities that's very important for shidduchim. So then it says kol kelim to unim tevila, and then all of these dresses that they borrowed, they all needed to be toivel. They need to be dipped in a mikvah.
These are all the dresses that they borrowed.
Yeah.
Dresses which were borrowed.
The white dresses, they all need to be toivel in a mikvah.
The white dresses.
The white dresses, yeah. So Amar Rabbi Elazar, he says afilu mekupalin umunachin bekusa. Even if like the dress was folded and placed in a box, so it was obvious that dress was already toiveled and laundered, and everything was done to that dress, but it was still toiveled every dress, just in case. And this goes into like the Karas HaMishpat and just making sure no one's embarrassed if like they were in a Zman Nida or something. And so then Benos Yisrael Yotzos V'cholos B'karamim. And then the daughters, they would go out and they would do these dances in the vineyard. So Tanya, it was taught in a Mishnah, Mi she'ein lo isha nifna l'sham. And then any of the young Bakrim or anyone looking for a wife, he could go to the vineyards and then he could look for his wife there. So this was like Motzi Yom Kippur, coming out of Yom Kippur, and coming out of Tubav was a great time for shidduchim. So then, miyuchasos shebehen hayu omros. So then, we saw before in the Mishnah that the women from the great families, like they would say different things. So Tana Rabbanan taught in a Baraisa. So Yefefiyo shebehen ma hayu omros. So the beautiful young women, like what would they say? They would say Tenu einechem liyofi. So everyone would like kind of like advertise or like say what their quality was. So the women that were very beautiful, they would say, look, place your eyes to beauty. Like you want beauty.
Saying, right?
But it's like deeper too. It's not like a shallow thing, just like you want beautiful kids. But it's kind of like, do you want a family that's beautiful? Do you want a family like with beautiful midos? Do you want a family that's going to be like a Kiddush Hashem? Do you want a family that's going to like all the great aspects of beauty that they're going to be able to put that into the world? So the daughters that had the beauty, they would say, look at beauty. So she'ein ha'isha ela liyofi. Right, so this is what the beautiful women would say. And then, meyuchasos shebehen ma hayomrim. So the women from the great families, from the very distinguished families, what would they say? They would say, tenu einechem lemishpacha. They would say, put your eyes to the family. And why would the reason of this? They say, Lefi she'ena isha ela levani. They say that the great thing about marriage is that women, can give a man children. So they were saying, so the first set of women were saying, you want a beautiful family, look at beauty. Like, we have beauty and we can make a beautiful family, look to that quality. So the women from the great families, who had very distinguished families, they say, what are you getting married for? You're getting married to have children. So look, we have great, Rosh Yeshivas in our families. We have great, Tzaddikim in our families. We have great, business, leaders in our families. Look to those, if that's the kind of family you want, look to those, look to us, because we have those great qualities. Look to the family, because you want to start a family. And then Mechoaros, and then the women that weren't so good looking, what did they say? Shebehen ma hayu omros, kechu mikachachem l'shum shamayim. They would say, marry us l'shem shamayim, ubilvad sheta'arunu b'zechuvim. And then adorn us with golden jewelry. Right, so it's interesting. So the Gemara says something very interesting here in the commentary. It says, so what does that mean? So they would say that the girls are more homely. They would say they wanted to convey the idea that fine jewelry and attractive clothing can compensate for lack of natural beauty. So that's the Aliyah Rabbah and the Orach Chaim. But what's interesting is what we talked about before in the Mishnah, that the greatest quality is really the Yirah Shamayim. It's like we say in Eishes Kayo, like, the one that's very praised is the woman, that has Yirah Shamayim. So it's interesting too in the days we live, because it's describing like this third group of women as Mechoaros, that they're not, not as renowned for their beauty, but what the quality is that they really have is the Yirah Shamayim. But what's so interesting is in our days, it's really like it says like in the last mission in Sota that the people that are really like Yiras Chet, like they'll be despised. It's like, and if we look in Israel, like the Haredim, like they're despised. Those that have Yirah Shamayim, like they're despised. And so it's really like, it's almost like they're being perceived as being ugly, but these are really the most beautiful women there. Because all the qualities they have, like if we look at the world right now, like the great qualities of like someone that, is like really Yirah Shamayim and Chavas Hashem, and is doing all the mitzvahs, like that's not looked as the chashuv of a person. It's the people out there like overexposing themselves, and like doing all this crazy stuff, like that's considered where the beauty is. But it's really like not seeing the true beauty that's really there. All right, so fine, just finish up. So Amar Ula Bira'ah, so Amar Rabbi Elazar, so Asid HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Li'asos Machol L'Sadikim. So the Kadosh Baruch Hu, he's going to make a circle, for all the Sadiqim. And what's interesting here is, there's a very interesting idea that's brought down. I have to look up who brings it down. It's very interesting. So these are kind of like a circle, and it goes back to the dancing of the daughters of Jerusalem. And a Machul is a circle. But what it says here, and I'll look up who says it, it says it's also related to Machal, Machila. And it's also related to forgiveness. And that's all we've been talking about, the whole transition of Tisha B'Av to Tu B'Av, and the whole transition of Yom Kippur to Sukkot. It's all about like Mechila, and then it creates this closeness again between us and Av, and our Av, our Vina Shabbat Shemayim. So let me see if I can find it. It says here, where did it say it? I don't know if I have who says it. Okay, but let's just finish up on the final point. So Hashem's going to make this circle for all the Tzaddikim. But the point was that all the Jewish people are going to be here. Because this Machol, this circle around the Kadosh Baruch Hu, is going to be filled with Mechila. So all the Jewish people will be forgiven. So maybe the Tzaddikim, or let's say like they're in the inner circle, but there'll be circles and circles of the Jewish people, and all the Jewish people will be around Hashem. So it says that Asid HaKadosh Baruch Hu Li'asos Machol HaSadikim. He's going to make this circle of dancing for the Sadikim. But who Yoshe Beinechem B'Gan Eden. And then Hashem, the Shekinah of Hashem, is going to be in the middle of Gan Eden, in the middle of Garden Eden, and all the Sadikim will be around him. V'kol Echad B'Echad Mareh B'Etzba'o, and every one of them will be able to point. Shnamar, and it says, V'Omar B'Yom Hahu Hine Elokeinu Ze Kavinu Lo V'Yoshi'enu Zeh Hashem kavinu lo, nagila v'nismacha v'yeshua so. He says, behold, this is our God, for whom we waited, that he might save us. This is the Lord for whom we waited. We will be glad and we will rejoice in his salvation. It's from Yeshaya 25:9, from Isaiah 25:9. So Hashem will be revealed, so that every righteous person, every tzaddikim will ever say, this is our God, as though they were pointing him with a finger. So what's so beautiful about this whole concept of machul and machal and the mechila is not only it's going to be dancing circles, but it seems like it's going to be dancing circles of the whole Jewish people. And the whole Jewish people, after everything we've gone through, after all the tragedies throughout all Jewish history, all the Tisha B'Avs, the destruction of the temples, all the crazy things that happened on Tisha B'Av during the Crusades, the pogroms, the Inquisition, the Holocaust, now down to October the 7th. And we see October the 7th the world was upside down. Shmini Atzeres is the holiest, one of the happiest days of the year, Simchas Torah. It should be the day that we're closest to Hashem, and it's unimaginable that we had this great tragedy happen on this day. It's really unimaginable that we had these great tragedies happen on the 17th of Tammuz, or Tisha B'Av, because none of it is the way it's supposed to be. So the secret of the month of Av, even though it's been a great day of tragedy, the day of tragedy is the beginning of the time of happiness. So when the temple's destroyed in Tisha B'Av, once Tisha B'Av's done, it's the very first time now that the temple can be rebuilt. So when we come out of Tisha B'Av, when we come out of Yom Kippur, we're really heading closer and closer to Hashem. Until finally, in Olam Haba, we will all be circling around Hashem, dancing, and being able to literally point and say, "There's my God." There is Hashem. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed it. That's the secret of Tu'av.
Oh. Thank you.
What do you think? Was part 2 better?
Great sequel.